Are there any key provisions of the Sectional Title Act that you want to highlight that you think a lot of people are not aware of?
I will tell you one provision, which is a very expensive mistake to make. So I think, I can just ask your viewers that whoever I have saved in terms of costs that I'm about to explain, they should at least bring the instruction to me to do it, because it's a substantial saving of money.
Yeah.
So there's a misconception that when you do a development, you can build separate units and sectionalize a single standing unit. And that has cost some developers a lot of money, because if you go to an architect that's not familiar with sectional title, you'll tell him that, look, I want to build 20 flats, and then I want to build 20 single-story apartments. And then what he'll do is he'll design the flats as buildings, and then he'll design the apartments as self-standing single-family residential apartments.
Yes.
And then now, when you go to the Sectional Titles Act, it says a sectional title can only be registered over a building that is capable of being subdivided into 2 or more units.
Tell me if you are not comfortable answering this question. We've just undergone a seismic political change. The ground has shifted under our feet under the new dispensation. Do you get the sense that things are likely to improve, although it might be early to say? But what is your gut feel? What do you think now that the BDP government is out of power, and now we have UDC with our colleague and advocate friend, Mr. Boko, in charge? This is Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We enthuse, we energize, we inspire, and we empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes in BW and beyond. Hello, Dumela, and welcome to another episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. I'm so excited as ever to bring you yet another show, life-changing, empowering business information. We're going to talk about legal issues, specifically sectional title, the issues of title. I brought one of the preeminent lawyers, one of the foremost lawyers in this area. You'll meet him momentarily. But a little housekeeping before we start. First and foremost, I have a book, guys. It only goes for $3.50. It's called Momp Nuggets of Grit. I open up, I share my whole story. I've been advertising it on all my platforms. Please extend me the courtesy of just acquiring this book. And of course, let me ask you to hit the subscribe button so that we can deal with these tough algorithms here on YouTube that are, that require that you at least press a like. If you can't subscribe, the minimum, press a like. So give us a like. Let me welcome my guest, Akheel Jinabhai. Welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mogobe.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you here. I've actually wanted you to pay us a visit for some time, but as a starting point, maybe you could share your condensed CV and a little background.
Okay, so my name is Akheel Jinabhai. I grew up in Botswana. I did my primary school in Thornhill, secondary at Bukamuso Junior, and senior was at Naledi, and then I went to UB to study my law. I graduated in 2001, I practiced. I started with Isaac Soloko Attorneys, then went to Mahang & Company, and that's where I found my love for property law, working under Mr. David Mahang. I was looking after Pakalani Estates, and property was everything I was doing there, and I learned a lot from him. And in 2004, I started Akheel Jinabhai and Associates. And then today this is where we are in terms of.
So it's now 2 decades you've been running it.
Yes.
Okay. Which areas have you chosen to specialize in?
So prior to joining Mahang & Company, I was predominantly a litigation attorney. But when I joined Mahang & Company, I was focusing more on property law. and a bit of litigation around property, because obviously I had one client at that time, and my one client was Pakalani Estates, and it was fun. So that's when I decided to specialize in property law, because I realized that property at that point in time was really given to conveyancing secretaries to do. There were very few attorneys that were looking after the property side of the law from the legal side.
Yes.
So I saw that there was a gap in the market, and I enjoyed it. You give me a divorce case to do, it will take me months and months, and I'll be miserable. But give me a property transaction, I won't sleep.
Okay. It's interesting that you've evolved to the point where now you present on property, you go to conferences on property, and indeed I saw you at one conference. How did that evolve, and what do you talk on when you're attending these conferences?
So there's an annual conference initiated by Property 267. The founders are Maje and Kim Becker from Seif Properties. It's the conference is called the Real Estate Conference of Botswana. In my opinion, it's a good initiative, because it brings about very relevant topics to the front with respect to property. It also gives an opportunity for people from outside Botswana to come in and speak. And because I've had long-standing relationships with a lot of estate agents and valuators, and that I was invited to speak, I'm sure it's because of my knowledge when it comes to property law.
I attended the one you appeared last year. I didn't have the privilege this year. Could you just share what you spoke on 2023, what you spoke on in 2024?
So last year was about the amendments to the Tribal Land Act. I think there was a lot of anxiety in the market with respect to the amendments, but we did speak about it, and I remember speaking to it that the amendments to the Tribal Land Act was actually good and welcome amendments, because it brought a lot of clarity to Tribal Land Act, to tribal land. Things such as consents with respect to transfer of tribal land, consents with respect to non-citizens, and also the development of tribal land.
Yes.
Interestingly, after the amendment of the Tribal Land Act, and personally speaking from the experience that I have with my own practice, the development and interest of the public in tribal land has gone up substantially. I mean, the amount of transactions we have at our office with respect to tribal land has basically exploded because of one thing. Tribal land now can be tribal land is now registered. Every piece of tribal land is registered. It can be mortgaged, and there's no requirement to develop if you want to sell and transfer your tribal land. But it still does have the development covenant.
And has that cascaded into the larger community or larger economy as an entrepreneur?
Yes, definitely. The reason, before the amendment of the Tribal Land Act, developers were not keen on tribal land because you could not transfer tribal land without first getting a compliance certificate. So that meant
without first developing.
That
taking additional risk.
Exactly. So now that tribal land can be subdivided and can be transferred without development, it's basically placed tribal land, in sort of the same basis as freehold land. So it gives much more flexibility to developers to do what they want to do with respect to tribal land.
And there's a special document called SLT?
Yes. So the term SLT, it's basically short for secured land title, and it's a term that's used to describe both certificates and leases. So because now certificates, after the amendment, certificates could be registered at the deeds office, both leases and certificates were now considered to be secured because it was registered and it's converted to real rights.
And then of course the general outcry is about delays in terms of the application of the new act, that it takes much longer. Is that still a problem?
Yes. Unfortunately, you know, speaking from someone who's on the ground and who requires the services of the land boards, we are experiencing substantial delays in relation to tribal land transactions, predominantly because every single tribal land transaction has to go through the board meeting. There's no streamlined processes for everyday processes where you just submit. There's an officer that checks
Whether
if
you
all
are
the boxes.
transferring, whether you are registering a bond over your property, it still has to go through
Anything you do,
it has to go through a full
board meeting. Yes,
Isn't that absurd?
it is. It is. I mean, if it's like you have everyday processes that should be automated and should have a proper workflow system. So once you submit, it goes through the workflow system, and results are produced within a specified time. If you've ticked all the boxes, you get your consent, you get your approval. But unfortunately, at this current stage, it's every single application.
Does the conveyancer have to appear before the board and motivate the transaction, or how does it work?
No, so basically, remember, with the amendment of the Tribal Land Act was also the amendment of the Deeds Registry Act, allowing the owner to represent himself at the land. The owner always could represent himself at the land boards, but now the owner can lodge the transaction at the deeds office. So the bottlenecks that we currently see is three things. Number one, the fact that every single application has to go through a board meeting, and the board only meets once in every month or 2 months, 3 months, depending on the land boards. Number two, there's no uniformity with respect to the land boards in terms of processes. So every land board, you have to understand their process instead of having a uniform system, which is surprising because they're all a creature of one statute. And then number three, there's currently a huge delay in lodging the transactions at the deeds office. So when I say lodging, every land board now has got its own conveyancer. And the conveyancer prepares the transaction, and on their online system, they lodge it at the deeds office. So that process of lodgement.
So your office, a conveyancing office, would submit the documents online directly to the conveyancer?
No, unfortunately, we have to submit physical documents. And once it's approved, then internally the conveyancer
will then load in the system.
Will then load those documents onto the system. We are hoping that the fact that we are all conveyancers, that we'll as conveyancers, we'll be given access to that system, and people of the public will be given an option to either go to a private conveyancer to assist with their transaction.
And is there a pattern in terms of which land boards are faster or more efficient than others?
Yes. You've got your favorite land boards, like the likes of Tlokweng Land Board. That's Tlokweng Land Board has been always recognized as one of the efficient land boards. And then the famous Kweneng and Tawana land boards, where the land there is very controversial. Those land boards,
they've ended up in the courts on those ones.
And there's substantial delays, and and I think the other biggest problem, and it just came to my mind now, which I think it's worth mentioning, is records keeping. I don't know if I can give an example of
you
what
can.
has happened.
Go ahead.
There was a time where I was at Tawana Land Board, and there was an application that I submitted for a client of mine. The application was pending. We did phone call follow-ups, and until eventually I told the client that, look, you need to at least now instruct me to go to the land board in order to follow up this matter. And I was sitting with the gentleman at the land board asking him about this matter, and this is now 8 months down the line. And he said to me that, Akheel, unfortunately our records management and files are not properly filed or kept, and we can't find the file. And that's the reason why it's taking so long. And I was looking behind him. There was a bunch of files behind him, and I looked and I was like,
there's the file.
Isn't that the file? And he turns around and he looks and he's like, yeah, that is the file. And then I was like, now can my client's application be processed, and it was processed then within 2 months. So you can imagine 8 months they couldn't find the file, and then once they did find the file, so
it
it's
doesn't seem
small
as if
issues
anybody
like
was looking for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
you see.
It was just lucky that you saw it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's issues like that I think that the small
when
things
when
will
are
make
they
a big
going to
difference.
centralize and computerize?
Well, that is one of the current requests, and surprisingly, it's coming from internally, meaning from the civil servants who deal with land transactions in Botswana. They, a lot of them have said to us that one of the solutions would be create a one-stop building where all government offices with respect to land are housed.
Yeah.
So your deeds registry, surveys and mapping, all your land boards, are in one building. So when you go there, you're able to sort out all of your transactions.
Would that require an amendment of the act, or it's already
not necessarily. I think it's more of a logistics issue.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's what you spoke about the first year. What more recently?
Recently,
a week or so ago.
Yes,
I believe you did a very good job, sir.
No, thank you.
I got the feedback.
Okay, now I'm happy to hear that. And it's actually a topic that we discussed this year that I've been very passionate about. It's when the Sectional Titles Act came in, and apart from all the benefits that the Act brought, which we'll discuss later, the main thing was, the main frustration of developers was that they could not, we had to find a way of assisting them in doing a development where, like in conventional developments, where you are able to sell to your buyers off plan. What that means is that the developer,
what is sometimes called turnkey.
Turnkey, yes, exactly. So what happens is that the developer puts the whole project together and then sells the properties before they are developed. So the reason why it was frustrating them with respect to sectional title is because you can only create a title for your unit once your unit is substantially complete. So the developer had to complete the unit, or has to complete the unit, before he can create a title deed that he can transfer.
Then he'll have to have some permit. What is it called?
So basically, in terms of the Sectional Titles Act, what happens is that in order to register a sectional scheme, you need approved sectional drawings.
Yes.
In order to get the approved sectional drawings, you need the surveyor to actually go on site.
I was thinking of a certificate of compliance.
No. You need, so basically it's called a certificate of registered sectional title. That's the title deed that the developer gets in order to transfer title to his buyer.
Okay.
And that can be mortgaged.
The Act has been in existence for how long now? Sectional Title Act.
The Act commenced in around 2003. Yeah.
But I think for the first several years, nobody had a clue how it works. It took time for even the likes of you to study it and to acclimatize yourselves.
Yeah. No, fortunately, when the Act commenced, I was still at Mahang and Company, and Mr. David Mahang, with the foresight that he has, he actually came to me and said, Akheel, sectional title starting, you better get yourself familiarized with it. And I knew a conveyancer in South Africa who had a lot of experience with sectional title. So I asked him if I could go there for about a week and,
to learn the basics.
Not the theory, but the practical side of it. Because theory, we are lawyers, we read, we understand. But I wanted to see it, working in motion and getting the practical experience around it. And then,
And it helped.
It helped tremendously.
What would you say is the biggest impact that it's had since it's come into effect?
So, in summary, sectional title has helped developers and property owners maximize their return on a piece of land. Because it's allowed developers to not only sell property that's horizontally, is it vertically built, but horizontal as well. So before
vertical and horizontal.
Before you could only sell a development if it was attached to the land directly.
Yes.
But now you can sell a unit that's on the 10th floor of a building. So you now can maximize your development space, both vertically and
How
horizontally.
does it work in practical terms, and who does the actual partitioning and sizing up of the different pieces?
So the starting point is obviously planning. You need to see an architect to determine what type of development you want to do. Your architect should be familiar with the sectional title laws and regulations. And then once the architect is done, in practice, you go to a land surveyor. But generally, an architect can also do survey drawings. But you go to a land surveyor who then duplicates or creates sectional title drawings. Those drawings are submitted to the Department of Surveys and Mapping for approval. Once the approval is obtained, you then go to a conveyancer attorney who will then prepare the necessary conveyancing documents and submit it to the deeds office for registration and the opening of a sectional title scheme. So that's just the process in a nutshell.
And at what stage do the big developers actually do the partitioning? Before commencement of the project, or during its, or better yet, after it's finished?
So traditionally, and it's been traditionally, and because of the Sectional Titles Act, the law says you can only do a sectional title scheme on existing developments or developments that are substantially complete. So developers traditionally has to now spend all of that money bringing the development up to substantial completion, and then they can only register the scheme and transfer title to their buyers. So this speaks directly to the topic we spoke about at the real estate conference.
Yes.
Which was the right to. So the Sectional Title Act has got a right that you can reserve to further develop
Yes.
a sectional scheme. So what this means is that you can develop a building, and say you want to, there's still enough land to develop 20 other buildings within the same plot. So you could develop one building and reserve the right to develop those 19 other buildings. And that right is considered to be immovable property under the Sectional Titles Act and capable of being subdivided and mortgaged.
Okay.
So that is what, so right now, that is what the discussion was about. That right is considered to be immovable property. But unfortunately, the problem is that the banks in Botswana, they're not comfortable at this current stage in mortgaging that right. So the discussion at the real estate...
So they don't? Or some do?
Well, the only... I won't speak for other developments, but within my experience, or within the experience that I have, there's only one development where we reserved the right. There were flats, and I'll mention them, the Jacaranda flats, the famous Jacaranda flats in the village.
Yeah.
Those flats were developed by BHC, sold, I think, to the Manual Workers Union, and the Manual Workers Union then sectionalized them. I think the initial amount of flats were 32, and then they wanted to develop a further 72 flats. So we sectionalized it, and we reserved the right to develop the further 72 flats. Now, the importance of reserving a right is that, remember, once a sectional title is created and you transfer the first unit, any piece of the land that's not reserved for future development becomes common property. And common property belongs to the body corporate, no longer the developer. So you could automatically, as the developer, lose, say, if you've got 10,000 square meters and you only developed 1,000, and if you don't reserve the right to further develop, you could lose that 9,000 square meters to the body corporate, and they would decide what they would want to do with the 9,000.
That's a big chunk of what I want us to talk about, the role of a body corporate and why they have so much power to erode the rights of the owner, even the rights of the developer.
Okay, so the simplest way that I can explain this concept of the body corporate in sectional title is as follows. So the Act says the moment a developer transfers the first unit to a third party, being a purchaser, automatically a body corporate is formed. So consider the body corporate as a separate legal entity, just like a private limited company. And that body corporate, the shareholders of that body corporate are the owners of all the sections in the sectional title development. The board of directors of that body corporate is what we call the board of trustees. So picture the body corporate.
And who are they?
The board of trustees are selected members or owners of the sections within the development.
So if you in your example you have just one, does that mean that he's the sole one until the time you get more?
In terms of the act, the developer has to call the first body corporate meeting. I'm thinking, I don't know if it's 30 days or 90 days from the date the first unit is transferred.
Yeah.
But in practice, that's practically impossible because the turnaround times at the deeds office with transfers, some transfers take 1.5 months, some can take 3 months.
Yeah.
Because so what basically we do in terms of the sale agreement is to mention that the first body corporate meeting will be called by the developer after a certain amount of sales and transfers are done.
10
maybe
minimum, 20.
I usually put 50% because because you'd want at least a minimum of half the units to be sold. So so at least half of the total owners of the units would be represented.
Yeah. Then who comes up with the rules and regulations of the body corporate, and how are they going to be applied to those?
So there's prescribed rules, management rules and conduct rules. Management rules is the constitution of the body corporate, like that what governs the management of the body corporate. And then conduct rules are the rules that the homeowners have to abide by.
Yes.
Example, no keeping of pets or park your car in certain areas. So that's the difference, and those are prescribed rules.
Yeah.
But the developer can amend those rules when they are registering the sectional title scheme.
Without involving the trustees.
Yes, because the developer wants to dictate how he's got the vision, he or she has got the vision in terms of what type of development he wants to create. So he would amend the management rules and the conduct rules. But remember, once the body corporate is formed and all the units are transferred, then it's the decision of the body corporate whether they want to amend the rules, which can be done at an AGM, just like any body corporate.
Have you, in your experience, seen this the tension between the body corporate and the developer? And can you give one or two instances of how that is dealt with?
So the tension, from my experience, the tension basically comes when the developer is also an owner of units within his own scheme. Because what happens is that for years and years, the owners will, if today, maybe it can be 5 years down the line, and you have a burst pipe in your unit, you'll quickly go to the developer's home, especially if the developer is living in that scheme, and say to him that, my pipe has been my pipe burst.
I need it fixed now.
And I need it fixed now, and it's your fault. And the developer is like, but the defects liability period is over. So it's I've seen that happen in action, and it's pretty difficult for the developer because he wears two hats: one as an owner and one as the developer who did the development. But generally, when it comes to body corporate disputes, it's handled in a very simple way. Just like company shares majority, the majority rule applies. So every
you can have the dictatorship of the majority.
Yes. So if you're buying into a sectional scheme and there's one owner that owns the majority of the units there, you must just know that whatever that owner wants will happen, because every owner's got something called a participation quota, which is based on the floor area. So the greater your participation quota, the greater your voting rights.
Just for the sake of the viewer out there, can you paint a picture of how it was prior to section title and how it is now generally?
So before sectional title, one could only subdivide developments. So remember, every development has to comply with planning permission. Planning permission requires you to have setbacks, and so if you had a 10,000 square meter plot and you wanted to build 10 units on it, because there was no sectional title, you would have to subdivide the 10,000 square meters into 1,000 square meters each. And you would lose development space because you had to comply with the setbacks.
Yes.
I think it's 5 meters front and back, and then I think 3 meters left.
2 or
left
3.
and right. So that 3 meters on 3 meters each was like 6 meters. Times 10 is 60.
It's a lot.
Yes. So you're losing 60 meters of development space, which you could capitalize on. So what the surveyors and the conveyancers at that point in time did was they were subdividing developments using leases. So they'd get lease diagrams approved at surveys and mapping, and then they'd register a 50-year or 99-year lease over these units. But you could only do it horizontally, because a lease can only be registered over a unit that's directly attached to the land. You cannot register a lease from a surveying point of view over a unit on the second floor or third floor. So what sectional title did was it brought about a lot of clarity, number one, to that those type of developments, and it also gave the opportunity for developers, like I said, to develop up. So that's why you see now all of these high-rise buildings coming up in town, 3 or 4 story multi-res developments.
Yeah,
if you notice the old multi-res, it was never 3 or 4 stories. It was always one going up, 2 always next to each other. They were never going
vertically up. Yeah. Okay. There's a thing called air rights that I've heard of in America, New York especially, that they can be very expensive. How do they feature in all of this? Do you have them in the Act?
So we don't have any law in Botswana specifically around property law with respect to air rights, but the reservation of real right under the Sectional Title Act now creates rights with respect to property in the air. Take, for example, I'm developing 2 20-story buildings.
Yes.
And I've developed my first building and sectionalized it, and I've reserved the right to build the next building. And you come along and you're like, Akheel, but I want the penthouse on the 20th floor
of the second one,
of the second building, which is not developed yet. And I can then now subdivide that right into 20 rights, and I can sell you the right to develop the building on the 20th floor, which is a right that protects that space
even before the first brick is laid down.
Yes. Yes. So it's a very interesting concept, and I've been.
In other words, you have people trading the air, literally.
Yes.
And reserving their rights up there. It's happening?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, like I said, the reason why there's no appetite for developers to do that is the banks have not yet caught on to this. Because, take for example, if that right to buy floor 20 on building 2, I sold it to you for 5 million pula. And you were able to buy it cash. Now, your ability to sell that right depends on the affordability of the next buyer. So how many people are you going to find with 5 million pula cash? So I, as a buyer, would want to buy that right, but I would like to take a mortgage on it. And the banks, unfortunately, are not mortgaging that specific concept. So just going back a few steps, we have mortgaged that right before, but as a whole. It was mortgaged. We did it in favor of First National Bank, and it was for the development in the village, the same development, the Jacaranda.
That you mentioned,
Yes, the Manual Workers Union sold the right to develop the further 72 units to another company called Lifestyle Properties. Lifestyle Properties mortgaged that right and then did the development.
Would you say there's a downside in all of this? Are there any disadvantages that you can think of when it comes to sectional, or is it all upside?
I think the only downside from my experience is that we need to create a robust legal land registration system focusing on sectional title. In fact, in terms of the Sectional Titles Act, there's supposed to be a Sectional Titles Committee formed by the Deeds Registry. That committee is not in existence. So the only frustrations we have when it comes to sectional title is specialization of sectional title within the government.
The land boards.
The
Well,
land
the government
boards, the
and-
surveys and look, I must give it to the Deeds Registry and to Surveys and Mapping. They've got people there that are extremely, in fact, 99% of the time when I don't have when I have a problem, I won't consult with colleagues in the private sector. I'll go to those individuals at the deeds office, and we'll debate it. And they also enjoy the debate because they got a passion for it.
Yes.
But unfortunately, deeds right now has got a mixture of everything in one. We've had discussions with the registrar where I've said to the registrar, why don't you compartmentalize deeds, create a workflow for conventional transactions, workflow for developers, which is sectional title
Yes.
and developments, and one for tribal land.
Yes.
And have specialists in those areas so that turnaround
To
times
streamline
can improve.
systems,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. What about speed? How long does it take from start to finish, typically?
So this is an amazing question because it actually gets to me quite emotionally because when I started conveyancing, I could register a transfer and a bond if it was extremely urgent within 3 days. If it was in its normal course and there was no mistakes on my transaction, minimum or within 7 days. That same process now can take you anywhere between 1.5, 2 months, even up to 3 or 4 or 5 months, because there's been a lot of
Over regulation, I would say.
over regulations and also separation, meaning we used to go to deeds and everything was handled at the deeds office. Transfer duty, bond registrations and everything. Today, you have to get various clearances from various different departments, and those processes take
And we're
long.
just talking about normal transaction. You're not
Normal
talking about
transaction.
sectional title.
No, just normal transactions.
So it takes an average of how much?
So if the average speed right now is, I think, between, if deeds doesn't have a backlog, and I'll speak to you about the backlog. If there's no backlog at the deeds office, around a month to, let's say about a month and a half to 2 months. 2 weeks at BRS and about 3 or 4 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks at the deeds office. If deeds,
There's no backlog.
there's no backlog. If there's a backlog, it can take up to 2 to 3 months, 4 months to get a transaction. Sectional title takes even longer. And the bigger the scheme, the longer the wait. So some schemes are taking us, before a sectional title scheme would take us about 4 weeks to get registered. Now it can take us anywhere between 7, 8, 10 weeks to be registered. So just to speak about the backlog, so I clear the name of the guy, clear the guys at the deeds office. Like I said, they are very good people. They're very helpful. Currently, they're under resourced. I spoke about this at the real estate conference.
Their people have been absorbed into the private sector.
That's one of the problems. But the major problem is that there was they took the deeds office away from the Attorney General and attached the deeds office to the Ministry of Lands. Now, when Attorney General is recruiting attorneys, Attorney General recruits for the AG chambers. This is what I'm made to understand.
Yes.
I may be wrong, but this is my
This
my personal understanding of the matter.
Yeah.
Don't take it as
gospel.
factual on the ground, but this is how I've summarized it in my mind.
Yeah.
Was that so? The deeds office now is under the Ministry of Lands. And Ministry of Lands do not employ lawyers. The Ministry of Lands has to ask the Attorney General. And so right now, deeds, both Francistown and Gaborone, I would say, are under-resourced by almost 20 attorneys. And if they can get those 20 attorneys, it would substantially improve the turnaround times.
Yeah.
I mean, the figures are 40 transactions, between 30 to 40 transactions get registered per day.
Yeah.
Between 150 to 200, or sometimes even 250 transactions get lodged per day. So you can imagine the bottleneck.
Yeah.
So that bottleneck is
the volume is quite huge.
The bottleneck is only cleared when deeds works overtime, or they're really not. And the other problem is most of the senior and experienced examiners, they are always called for meetings.
Yeah.
You know, they're always at the ministry or gone out for conferences and meetings and that. So it's a struggle.
Well, tell me if you are not comfortable answering this question. We've just undergone a seismic political change. The ground has shifted under our feet under the new dispensation. Do you get the sense that things are likely to improve, although it might be early to say? But what is your gut feel? What do you think now that the BDP government is out of power, and now we have UDC with our colleague and advocate friend, Mr. Boko, in charge?
Yeah. So, I mean, sensitive question, but factually, Mr. Duma Boko, our current new president, is a lawyer. He's experienced.
He's been in the trenches.
Yes, he's experienced what we are experiencing on a daily basis. He understands, the issues that we go through on a daily basis, and the fact that he's an attorney, us as colleagues, we talk to each other, we understand, we complain to each other that, I wish this was better, I wish that was better. So I'm sure there were discussions with Mr. Boko and colleagues from the legal fraternity in terms of what issues we were facing in the country. And we, when you experience it's human nature.
Yeah.
When you experience those issues firsthand, it's something that you understand and you can comprehensively solve.
Yes.
It's like your company. If you don't know what's going on in your company, you're not going to be able to solve it. So unless you're one of those entrepreneurs that are hands-on all over the place, then that differentiates your success based on those that are not hands-on. So look, my personal, Mr. Boko was also a lecturer. He took me for introduction to law and jurisprudence. When I was at the University of Botswana, I experienced him firsthand. He's very passionate about the law. And I believe that if the legal system and the land registration system in any economy, if it's working properly and it's efficient and it's got good integrity, it has a natural flow on the rest of
the economy,
the wheels of the economy. Things just start moving in the right direction. So
so there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope.
Very optimistic that he's going to sort a lot of the issues that we currently have.
The Act, you've obviously studied it, turned it upside down. Are there any key provisions of the Sectional Title Act that you want to highlight that you think a lot of people are not aware of?
I will tell you one provision, which is a very expensive mistake to make. So I think, I can just ask your viewers that whoever I have saved in terms of costs that I'm about to explain, they should at least bring the instruction to me to do it, because it's a substantial saving of money.
Yeah.
So there's a misconception that when you do a development, you can build separate units and sectionalize a single standing unit. And that has cost some developers a lot of money, because if you go to an architect that's not familiar with sectional title, you'll tell him that, look, I want to build 20 flats, and then I want to build 20 single-story apartments. And then what he'll do is he'll design the flats as buildings, and then he'll design the apartments as self-standing single-family residential apartments.
Yes.
And then now, when you go to the Sectional Titles Act, it says a sectional title can only be registered over a building that is capable of being subdivided into 2 or more units. So we had developers that did the full development, did surveys and mapping, registered the diagram, approved the diagrams and came to us, and we said to them, we can't register the sectional scheme because your units do not share common boundaries. So you don't have a building that's capable of being subdivided into 2 or more sections.
How would it have been designed? Double walls or what? I mean,
so basically, remember that a sectional title can only exist on one plot.
yes.
Number one, and a sectional title is a subdivision of a building. You can't subdivide a building that's not capable of being subdivided.
No, you can't.
So that's a subdivision. That's not a sectional title. So our transaction got rejected, saying that you have to subdivide all the plots where the single family residential addresses are. I mean units, apartments are, and you can only register a sectional scheme over the multi-story building. Now think about it. If the subdivision is not possible because of planning permission, setbacks and everything.
Yeah.
Because remember, when people do these developments, they don't observe the setbacks because they say it's sectional title. So you can't subdivide, you can't register your sectional scheme, so you're stuck. So what these developers had to do is amend their drawings, at least connect 2 singles to make it one building capable of being subdivided. So I think that's for me that's the most important.
And the cost of now going back to the drawing board
goes
and redoing,
to the millions.
Yes, it's a lot.
Yes.
So you've had developers, learning those beta lessons.
Yes. So it's that's why, there's this thing in town saying anyone can do conveyancing. Conveyancing is not magic. It's just templates, and you use those templates and you submit them at the deeds office.
Yeah,
it's
not the case.
It's not the case. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of law in terms of conveyancing. And property law is not only about conveyancing.
And I think you have to be passionate about it.
Yes.
My impression, you are very passionate.
Yes. No, like everything. Everybody's everybody's good at what they do because of passion.
Yeah. Look, I want to just touch on your entrepreneurial side. I mean, obviously, this show, this program, this podcast is about entrepreneurs. Do you want to just summarize your entrepreneurial journey and explaining whether or not you see the law firm as an entrepreneurial pursuit? You're running it as a business, and what are the considerations, and share some of your secret sources in terms of your secrets of success.
So I think the entrepreneur side obviously comes out from my upbringing. Like I said, my dad was a businessman, and we grew up in a home, like I believe any other kid who's brought up in a business environment would be. We grew up in a home where we essentially, after school, was go to my dad's business and work there, and then only after the business closed you go home and do your homework and
what was the business doing?
He was running a pharmacy, station pharmacy at the station, and he had a car music fitment business, jamming sounds, which now my younger brother is running.
Your younger brother is a DJ. DJ who? What?
I've got, so basically, the youngest is DJ Kuchi.
I know that is a famous one.
Yes, he's quite well known in town. A lot of people, we look alike. So every time I go out or I go around town, then guys will be like, "Hey, there's DJ Kuchi." And obviously, if I'm at like maybe at your restaurant or at one of your venues where guys are drinking and having a party, and people come to me and are you DJ Kuchi? I'll be like, yeah, I am. It gets me free entrance into venues. Everywhere I go where it's entertainment, and people are like, this is DJ Kuchi. They just let you in for free. So I enjoy that part of it. Yeah, but he's my younger brother. He's quite a successful DJ. He runs his own nightclub, Deja Vu. And he's also, he's also
our neighbor here.
yeah, he's also doing water bottling. His brand is called Agua. And then I got my third the brother that comes directly after me, Bo. He's running Jamming Sounds. He does car music systems. He does motor vehicle electricals. Very well known for car music systems. I'm sure guys around my generation will know me for a famous VW Caravelle that I used to drive around town, green one.
Yeah, I remember.
That had extremely loud music. If I was driving past your house, your windows would be vibrating. So that's my father loved music, and my father loved good quality music. So because of that, we all, I think it's in our genes. Music, loud music, good quality music. So my brother's a DJ. The other one does car sound. And then my elder brother is in South Africa. Unfortunately, he had to leave Botswana because he's a South African citizen, and they had to localize his post at the place he was working here. So he's now staying in South Africa here. But he grew up here.
He didn't take on citizenship like you did.
I did. We did. We've all applied for citizenship. Funny enough, my dad was a citizen. I'm a citizen. But my elder brother and my two younger brothers, they still
struggling.
Yeah, they've been rejected about 3 or 4 times. So they just keep applying.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
they shouldn't give up.
Yeah, no, they're not giving up. I mean, Botswana is our home. We grew up here. We integrated here.
So others go for sound and they go for music, but you decide to go for law.
Yes.
And so how did you weaponize that, entrepreneurially speaking?
So because I grew up in a home, and my dad was all about business. We wanted spending money. You need to work in order to get money. You wanted a computer, spend X amount of hours at the business, then you'll get a computer. Nothing came for free for us. Our social life, we had no social life. It was limited to maybe Saturday night, because Sunday there was no work. And one of the things that my father enforced as a rule in our house was that we could do anything. But provided we had a degree. And to tell you the truth, when I was in Form 5, I actually wanted to go into business. I actually told my dad, let me come into the business and I'll help you grow your business, and maybe we'll open up a chain of pharmacies or a chain of music stores or whatever. But he refused. He said, go and get your degree first. And even I remember his words were, get your degree. After that, even if you're selling tomatoes on the streets, I don't care. Yeah. That's up to you. But get your degree, because he always said to us, with a degree, wherever you go in the world, you'd be able to do something, and survive. So I guess that's where it came from. But after having started law, and I think a lot of influence from my classmates, a lot of influence from lecturers like our president, I saw how interesting the law was, and I could see that being a lawyer, you could actually make a difference
in people's lives.
In people's lives. Because what is our job? It's to add value. Any professional is to add value. And the moment you add value, then you get paid for adding that value. You don't get paid for just being a lawyer. No. You have to add value. And I think that's where... And
the more substantial, the better for you.
Yes. And adding value, it comes with passion.
Yeah.
So I think... So that I think my dad's influence and the influence that I got from studying law at the University of Botswana drove me to try and drove me to start Akheel Jinabhai and Associates and grow it into the practice that it is today. And then also
you always seem to also like partnering with other established lawyers. I mean, I remember in the early days you were with a certain Zeman. And then after Zeman, you joined up with Desai, and now you are with Mr. What's his name? I think I forget, Mr. McKee. Yes. So have you always believed in the importance of partnering or associating with other?
I guess it's because I'm third generation Indian in Africa, and the famous African proverb: if you go alone, you'll go fast, but if you go together, you'll go far. So it's I love working with people. I love and I see value. If you're not willing to share success, you remember I think you once said it. Your success does not determine my success.
No.
So why should I be jealous of your success?
True.
I should wish you to be more successful so that, like, you're a perfect example. We're both attorneys.
Yeah, yeah.
And today, you're a successful property mogul in Botswana, and you are using my services for some of your property transactions.
Yes.
So I'm actually benefiting from you because you could do it yourself, but you are sharing your success with me by saying to, so I think
that's because you create more value.
Yes. So my with me creating associations and mergers and partnerships all the time is because I want to create a law firm that, I would like to create a law firm that goes beyond me. It must be a legacy firm, and hopefully, I don't think, and hopefully carry on like those firms in South Africa where it's 100 years old, 200 years old.
Yeah, the mentioning as well.
So with all of, and being and having the entrepreneur streak in me, I'm not satisfied with just
the law.
having a practice. I want to turn my practice into a business. Because lawyers do not earn passive income. We sell time, and if we're not selling time, we're not making money. And if, say for example, we fall sick,
then there's no income.
There's no income. So that was creating strong partnerships and building long-lasting relationships. You just have the hope that if something happens to you, your partners will.
So how do you ensure that you introduce that passive income element, and then do you diversify your risk in any way?
So Cyril was one of my mentors as well. He must be right now in his early 80s. And one thing he told me when I started my practice, he said, "Akhil, as a lawyer, you live a good life, but don't fool yourself that if you don't diversify, and something happens to you, your income stops on that day that thing happens to you." So he says diversify, invest in property, invest in other businesses, and try and do something else. And when I heard that, and I was like, that's true.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I think that I was focusing on building my passive income, just to ensure that, now I've got a wife and I've got a son, and if something has to happen to me, they're not going to benefit from the law firm.
Yeah.
So they have to benefit from something else, and I think that's predominantly the reason why, instead of investing in temporary, immediate pleasure, I was looking at more long-term.
Which is property.
Yes.
And how is your portfolio?
I would say I've got a reasonable portfolio. I'm, at the end of the day, I'm at that stage where I took a lot of risk in terms of.
I know we're neighbors in Pakalani. We have warehouses there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I took a lot of risk, like every property developer, in getting loans and learning a lot. You get a loan, you either under recover or over recover, but throughout the years it's balanced.
Yeah.
And I started my first property I bought. In fact, the first property I bought was actually from our former president Masire in African Mall. That was the first property that I ever bought in my life, and it was amazing because I had met him, and we did the transaction, and I acquired that property, and I think that was at the age of 24 or 25.
Wow. While you're still with Maharamahan.
Yes, and that's the property I actually bought where I wanted to move Akheel Jinabhai and Associates to in African Mall. And then when I bought that property, then another property came up, and then it just started happening.
Yeah.
And then I decided that no, I'll wait for CBD, and I was at Olobatsi Road, and then when CBD came up, that's when I moved to Grand Union offices.
Yeah.
So
that's when you were with Desai.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Desai was 2 years after I moved to CBD.
Oh yeah, Grand Union.
Yes.
This side.
Grand Union is opposite Square Mart. And then when I partnered with Desai, we moved to Central Square. Which is opposite the Fields.
Yeah, this is great. And is there a lesson that you've learned from partnership in terms of the temperament you need, the emotional intelligence level that you need to have successful partnerships?
Yes, I think partnerships in my mind it's all about compromise. It's all about a shared vision. and lifting one another. In my view, a partnership will always work where first and foremost that you have each other's interests at heart, and secondly that you have the same vision that you want to push forward, and it's all about compromise. If you have two bulls in one kraal,
it won't work.
It won't work. And I think that's one of the things that I know that you have to compromise a lot, and you need to see the bigger picture. A lot of people look for immediate, like I've partnered with you, where's the money? And I always say to people that the partnership is always about the bigger picture, that you have to go through the rough before you get to the diamond, right?
No, that's very good advice. Thank you. I appreciate that, sir. Now, we've gone full circle, and we're coming, as we wrap up our conversation, I want us just to touch on sectional title one more time. Help the viewer understand the interaction between the three categories of properties. By that I mean freehold, leasehold, and what's the other one? State land. In terms of how the Sectional Title Act works for these three categories.
So, Botswana's Sectional Title Act was essentially it was taken from, I think, from South Africa. Our land tenure system in Botswana is unique. We've got tribal land and we've got leasehold land. Tribal land is leasehold land, but it's governed under the Tribal Land Act. And then you've got state grant, which is a fixed period. State grant is basically the government is giving you a proper land as an owner for a fixed period. So the law is interesting. So the lease, you're a leasee for a period of 50 years, subject to the terms and conditions of the lease.
Yes.
Whereas a state of fixed period state grant, the law says you are an owner, but your ownership is limited to the fixed period. So that was the two difference. So because the Sectional Titles Act did not cater for leases, there was I think he's now a Judge Sogopolo, had to go to court and get a judgment in order for
while he was still a practicing
lawyer, in order to get sectional titles registered over tribal land, leasehold property. So
a judgment was issued.
I can't remember the name. It's escaping me now because it's more than 10 years ago, and we haven't the judgment. We no longer required to use that judgment because now we can register sectional title over
the law was amended.
No, the law hasn't been amended, but the judgment has been. So remember, at the deeds office also, once a precedent has been created, for as long as that precedent is not unlawful, the deeds has to apply it. So with that judgment came the first precedent, and then it evolved.
So what was it about? What is it that my former partner did with that judgment?
He
partnered with Hopolo in the beginning.
He basically, I think, if my memory serves me correct, basically, because the Sectional Titles Act defined an owner of rights to immovable property, and immovable property contains registered leasehold rights in Botswana. He went to court to say if immovable property is considered to be registered leasehold rights, and therefore an owner under the Sectional Titles Act can sectionalize, because it says an owner can sectionalize if he's a registered holder of immovable property. He went to court and said, then why can't sectional title apply to leasehold? Because leasehold is registered real rights and it should be capable of being sectionalized.
Yes.
And I think the judge, if I'm not mistaken, was Judge Newman, and I think he agreed with him. I might be wrong in terms of the actual exact facts of the case, but in a nutshell, that's what it was about. So he went to court, and then the judge ruled that sectional title can be registered over leases. And then they had to go to court again because deeds rejected, saying, but the judgment did not say how leasehold rights are going to be conveyed under sectional title. And then there was another judgment that say you convey sectional title rights.
He went back to the same judge.
I don't know if it was the same judge, but obviously back to the High Court.
Yeah.
And it basically then said sectional title rights now can be transferred by way of a certificate of registered sectional certificate of registered cession of sectional title. Because remember, leases can only be transferred by way of cessions on assignments.
They can. There'll be two documents. There'll be the original registered lease attached to a session, deed of session.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's so basically that now brought about sectional title laws with leasehold, state grant, and freehold.
Yeah. So kudos to Mr. Sohopolo and Judge Newman for that. So if you were advising somebody who's sitting on a piece of land, maybe totally clueless as to how to unleash value, what would be your advice to what steps to take to release value from that land, be it in terms of equity release or something to take advantage of the act? In other words, what is the one thing that the viewer needs to be aware of so that they can take full advantage of the act and make money or grow their estate?
So number one, like I said, sectional title allows you to maximize the amount of development you can put on your land.
Yes.
So the more development, the more returns you get. But the other interesting thing about the section, the real right that I talked about, I'll give you a typical example. Let's say you own a plot, a multi-residential plot, but you've only got the ability to develop 12 units. But your plot can contain 48 units. So you, at this current stage, would, without sectional title, you would have just built those 12 units, subdivided and sell them without being able to develop the remainder of the plot because you would not get planning permission for subdivision. So with sectional title now, you could build those 12 units, sell them, reserve the right to build the other 32 units or whatever the calculation is. And now with that reservation of right, if you don't have the financial ability to develop those further 32 units yourself, you could sell that right to someone else. You see, so that's how you can maximize and return on a plot. You've got money to build 12 units. You've built those 12 units. You've made profit from those 12 units. Now, for some reason, your financial circumstances have changed. So if you've reserved the right, you could sell the ability to build 32 units to someone else and get a couple of bucks from there. So you know, there's that, and then there's also the ability to approach developers. You know, there's many developers that would be interested in acquiring, doing joint venture partnerships with you in terms of land development. And you know, you could do, before it would just be traditionally, give me your land, let me do a development, let's sell the entire thing, and then we share the profits. Now you could do an arrangement where you say, I'll give you the land, you do the development, but do a sectional title development, because I don't want money, I want immovable property for passive income. So the developer would say, the developer would come in and say, okay, I'll build 20 units. For the cost of your land, you keep 5 units. You can earn 20,000, 30,000 per rental a month, and I sell the rest of the units. So, you know, it provides a lot of flexibility.
Wow. That's wonderful. Now, from a view of consumer protection, protecting the public, how do they pick and choose their sectional title conveyances? Is it not important to be a bit discriminating and get people with the necessary skill? And how do you go about it?
I think, look, as long as you're an admitted conveyancer, sectional title was part of your course at the university. But like any profession, you know, if you're a jack of all trades and a master of none, you know, if that's the type of person you want to go to, you'll obviously not get the best. So my advice to people is like, I don't profess to be a labor attorney or a litigation attorney. You know, I always tell people when they ask me, I'm like, I'm a lawyer that look after property developers and business people. So selecting, I would advise, look at the background of your architect, your surveyor, your conveyancer, and see what sectional.
See if they have a track record.
Yes, because if you go to the wrong person, remember, property development and sales, property is going to be there even beyond your lifetime. So what you do today could come back and bite you 20 years from now. And that's what I always say to people, that turnaround times and getting the job done quickly, anyone can do that. But when you put your signature to that development, and you then know that that development now has got your name on it, you are prepared to be answerable for any consequences or comebacks. Yes, you know,
perpetuity.
Yeah, so I think it also gives a lot of integrity to the development.
Yeah. Speaking of comebacks, are there any setbacks or challenges of a significant nature that you want to share that you've encountered as a conveyancer, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur?
You know, we spoke about the delays with land registration.
Yes,
you know, it's 7 days to 6 months or 4 months or 3 months, whatever it is. Just look, what is the value of the puller to the dollar today? What is it going to be next week? What is it going to be 3 months from now? Cost of material goes up. You know, like you always see, there's something that I always say to my staff, you know, when we have clients. You've got clients who are entrepreneurs, and you've got clients who are not entrepreneurs. And the difference between the two is that the entrepreneur client or the right will be phoning us every 5 minutes, knocking on our doors and pushing us to say how far, because they know every second counts.
Time
when
is
it comes.
money.
So I think my biggest challenge, there's a lot of opportunities in Botswana, but for us, in my opinion, as Botswana to proceed, we need to be, if things just become efficient, issues of the issues that are currently being faced in the economy, not everything, but at least one aspect of the economy will start improving. Efficiency brings about quicker turnaround times. Quicker turnaround times brings about, you know, the faster flow of money. I remember when I was working for Mr. Mahang, you know, one of the things he explained me, he says, just like your body, your blood has to flow in order for your body to survive.
Yes.
And he says, just like an economy, money has to flow in the economy in order for the economy to survive. And he's like, in Botswana, we call money and blood Madi.
By the same name.
The same name. So this is one country that should understand that in order for our economy,
cash flow is important.
Cash flow is important. Money has to exchange hands every day.
I like it. He would say that.
Yes, Mr. Mahang said that to me, and that's when I was like, okay, you know, and he's like, that's how our economy works.
So no specific setback that you've suffered. It's just
setbacks is when I had little work, turnaround times were fast. Now that I've got a lot of work, turnaround times are slow. So I'm not able to capitalize and realize all the hard work that I've put in. Because right now I'm supposed to be enjoying the quick turnaround times and realizing the return.
Look at the one transaction I'm supposed to have given you 3 months ago. Still pending.
Exactly. So you know, I mean, imagine those days I had 5 transactions and it took me 7 days to realize the return on those transactions. Today I've got 1,000 transactions and it's taking me forever to realize. You know?
That makes sense. Now, as we conclude our conversation, sir, this is a time where you get to ask me a question, if you have one.
I think it would be interesting as a property. Someone who's recognized as a successful property owner in Botswana, how do you see the property market going in the next, let's say, in the next 10 years? Do you see there'll be still a big demand for property, and in which space do you see?
Well, to answer that question, I have to look at the record in terms of the track record of this economy when it comes to property. I think, depending on the sector, we've experienced a growth rate of between 7 and 10% if we spread it out. You know, obviously retail has been one of the best performing areas, as has followed by commercial and to some extent multi-residential market. But that one tends to stagnate because you can only go so far. For instance, 2.5 bedroomed or 2-bedroomed apartments can only go in a certain area, say Tokweng. You can't go much further than 3,000. You know, it doesn't matter the quality of the finishes. There's sort of a ceiling that you reach. But I would say that based on past performance of the market over the years, there is an upward trajectory And if we can deal with the issues that you mentioned relating to bottlenecks, relating to just inertia, sometimes it's just pure laziness. If we can deal with that, and my hope is that with the coming of the new dispensation of the new government, and with the energy that they are bringing, because I noticed that if there's one thing about the new government, the UDC government, is that they are youthful.
Yes.
You have a lot of people in their 40s, and even the leadership in the, Boko, I think is in early 50s, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he's 54.
Yeah, so he's mid 50s. So he's still, that gives you the the notion that there's energy in the system. So I have a lot of optimism, but property has never disappointed me in terms of because I adopt a buy and hold strategy. I'm not much of a seller. I believe that if God has given you that property, He's given it to you to hold. Okay. He's given it to you for you to pass on. So I never sell. Okay. I would rather recalibrate, reconfigure, change use or whatever. But I never sell property as a rock, a bedrock principle that I won't move shift from. So to answer your question, I think I'm very, very optimistic.
Okay, that's good.
I teach my 2 mentorship programs. One is on entrepreneurship, the other is on property. And what I tell my mentees is that although you can go spectacularly wrong in property, but if you empower and equip yourself, you can do very, very well in property. Yeah. So I think the market is a bit, it's slowed down a bit, but I think it's just waiting for that. It's getting ready to pop.
Yeah.
It's getting ready to pop.
Now, a lot of businessmen say that economies always have this cycle.
Yeah,
it's like 5 or 6 years, it's bad.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden there's a boom.
Yes.
Yeah.
But property, if you manage it well, will generally be on an upward scale. I mean, Botswana is one of the countries where I can say without any hesitation that COVID has not affected our property values. It slowed things down, but it never affected the property valuations. And the valuers are telling me that there's a resilience in the economy that tells you that, things are always looking up.
Yeah.
But you have to empower yourself. You have to educate yourself, which means mentorship, which means readership, which means going out to the type of workshops that you participated in.
And we just have to, I think we just also have to make sure we got the right policies in place. I mean, as a practicing conveyancer, when the 30% transfer duty was introduced, it was the first time in my practice where I was transferring a property for less than what it was bought. So it was a residential house. First time I was shocked.
Yeah.
And
because of the impact of that 30%.
The impact of the 30%. So yeah.
No, it has since been reversed?
It's since been reversed, yes.
And it's what now?
So now it's for non-citizens, it's 10% of the first 2 million.
Yes.
And then 15% thereafter. But if the transaction attracts VAT, then there's no transfer duty. Okay. So at least developers who sell their properties, they have to charge VAT.
So now they're happy.
So they've got an equal share of the market, meaning it's open to both citizens and non-citizens.
Yeah. And incidentally, for citizens,
it's so. Transfer duty is based on the purchase price or open market value, whichever is higher.
Yes.
For citizens, you get the first one. You get what's the right word? You get a waiver of the first 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Or dispensation of the first.
In other words, you don't pay transfer duty.
So above 1.5 million, it's 5%.
Of the portion above only.
Yes. So if your property is valued, if your property is valued at 1.4 million, for instance. And you won't pay transfer duty as a citizen.
And then if VAT is payable, just explain to me.
If VAT, under the previous Transfer Duty Act, it said that transfer duty is exempted to the extent VAT is applicable. So when you had 30% and you paid VAT, you'd still pay 16% transfer duty.
Yeah.
Today, the amendment says if VAT is payable, or if VAT is applicable rather, transfer duty is exempted completely.
Okay.
So exempted for both citizen and non-citizens.
Wow.
So that opened the market for property developers again. And then
good.
that created more demand.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. This is the part where you look at that camera, Mr. Jinabhai.
Yes.
And leave the viewer with a compelling, motivational message or point that you want to leave them with?
Yeah. So viewers, as you've heard our discussion, property is it's a sure way of securing your future, but you have to educate yourself. Surely every property developer, every property owner will always tell you there's some good properties and some bad properties. But yeah, I hope this interview was informative, and my contact details are on our website. Our website is aja.co.bw, I wish you all the best. And
Let's not make assumptions. Tell them how to reach you. Is there a landline?
Oh, okay.
And also, if there's a WhatsApp number as well.
Okay. Can I start that section again?
No, it's all right.
It's
go
okay.
ahead. Yeah.
All right. So I'm reachable on my cell phone, which I don't mind sharing with anyone. It's 71200 733. Our office landline is 361-3125. And you can send me an email on Akheel, AKHEEL, at aja.co.bw. And you can also find us on our website, on Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. Thank you for watching this interview, and I wish you all the best, and I look forward to assisting anyone who wants to go into property.
All right. Thank you very much. You've done a remarkable job, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. All right. Cheers.